Chapter 12, Department of Energy and Related Commissions. Bernard L. McNamee, American Energy and Science Dominance. The next conservative administration should prioritize energy and science dominance to ensure that Americans have abundant, affordable, and reliable energy, create good-paying jobs, support domestic manufacturing and technology leadership, and strengthen national security. Achieving these goals will require bold policy action and reforms that involve the U.S. Department of Energy, DOE, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC. American energy dominance. Access to affordable, reliable, and abundant energy is vital to America's economy, national security, and quality of life. Yet, ideologically driven government policies have thrust the United States into a new energy crisis just a few short years after America's energy renaissance, which began in the first decade of the 2000s, transformed the United States from a net energy importer, oil and natural gas, to energy independence and then energy dominance. Americans now face energy scarcity, an electric grid that is less reliable, and artificial shortages of natural gas and oil despite massive reserves within the United States, all of which has led to higher prices that burden both the American people and the economy. The new energy crisis is caused not by a lack of resources, but by extreme green policies. Under the rubrics of combating climate change and ESG, environmental, social, and governance, the Biden administration, Congress, and various states, as well as Wall Street investors, international corporations, and progressive special interest groups, are changing America's energy landscape. These ideologically driven policies are also directing huge amounts of money to favored interests and making America dependent on adversaries like China for energy. In the name of combating climate change, policies have been used to create an artificial energy scarcity that will require trillions of dollars in new investment, supported with taxpayer subsidies to address a problem that government and special interests themselves created. The result has been increased energy costs that hurt individuals and families, especially low-income Americans and seniors on fixed incomes, make businesses that create the jobs that drive our economy and quality of life less competitive, and make America less energy secure. Moreover, increased energy scarcity will allow government, either directly or through access to banks and Wall Street investors, to decide who is worthy to receive funding for energy projects. In the end, government control of energy is control of people and the economy. This is one reason why the trend toward nationalization of our energy industry through government mandates, bans on the production and use of oil and natural gas, and nationalization of the electric grid is so dangerous. At the same time, adversaries like China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and non-state actors are constantly engaged in cyber attacks against our energy infrastructure. We have already seen what supposedly minor attacks, such as the cyber attack on the Colonial Oil Pipeline or the physical attack on electric infrastructure in North Carolina, can do. A coordinated cyber and physical attack on natural gas pipelines and the electric grid during an extended cold spell could be catastrophic. Yet the current administration's first concern is plowing taxpayer dollars into intermittent wind and solar projects and ending the use of reliable fossil fuels. A conservative president must be committed to unleashing all of America's energy resources and making the energy economy serve the American people, not special interests. This means that the next conservative administration should promote American energy security by ensuring access to abundant, reliable, and affordable energy. Affirm an all of the above energy policy through which the best attributes of every resource can be harnessed for the benefit of the American people. Support repeal of massive spending bills like the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, and Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, which establish new programs and are providing hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies to renewable energy developers, their investors, and special interests, and support the rescinding of all funds not already spent by these programs. Unleash private sector energy innovation by ending government interference in energy decisions. Stop the war on oil and natural gas. Allow individuals, families, and business to use the energy resources they want to use and that will best serve their needs. Secure and protect energy infrastructure from cyber and physical attacks. Refocus the Department of Energy on energy security, accelerated remediation, and advanced science. Promote U.S. energy resources as a means to assist our allies and diminish our strategic adversaries. Refocus FERC on ensuring that customers have affordable and reliable electricity, natural gas, and oil, and no longer allow it to favor special interests and progressive causes. Ensure that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission facilitates rather than hampers private sector nuclear energy innovation and deployment. American science dominance. Ever since the age of Benjamin Franklin, the United States has been at the forefront of scientific discovery and technological advancement. Beginning with the groundbreaking science of the Manhattan Project, the U.S. has developed 17 national laboratories that conduct fundamental and advanced scientific research. The national labs have been critical in supporting national defense and ensuring that the United States leads on scientific discoveries with transformative applications that benefit America and the world. In recent years, however, U.S. science has been under threat. Externally, adversaries like the Chinese military have been engaged in scientific espionage, infiltrating taxpayer-funded scientific research projects and funding their own science research. In addition, the national labs have been too focused on climate change and renewable technologies. American science dominance is critical to U.S. national security and economic strength. The next conservative president, therefore, needs to recommit the United States to ensuring this dominance. Mission statement for a reformed Department of Energy. The Department of Energy should be renamed and refocused as the Department of Energy Security and Advanced Science, DSES. DSES would refocus on DOE's 5 existing core missions: providing leadership and coordination on energy security and related national security issues, promoting U.S. energy economic interests abroad, leading the nation and the world in cutting-edge fundamental advanced science, remediating former Manhattan Project and Cold War nuclear material sites, and developing new nuclear weapons and naval nuclear reactors. These missions work together by using advanced science to promote national security while getting the government out of the business of picking winners and losers in energy resources. Reform is needed because DOE, instead of focusing on core energy and security issues, has been spending billions of taxpayer dollars to subsidize renewable energy developers and investors, thereby making Americans less energy secure and distorting energy markets. Overview. DOE was created by the Department of Energy Organization Act of 1977 in response to the 1970s oil crisis, consolidating various energy programs that previously had operated without coordination throughout the federal government in a single department. In addition to addressing energy issues, DOE is tasked with engaging in basic and fundamental science and research through the 17 national laboratories, cleaning up the Manhattan Project and Cold War nuclear material and weapon sites, developing sites for the storing of civilian nuclear waste, and developing new nuclear weapons and naval reactors through the Semi-Autonomous National Nuclear Security Agency, NNSA. Beyond these core responsibilities, DOE currently administers billions of dollars that support research and commercialization of energy technology, provides loans to the private sector for energy infrastructure and technology commercialization, and issues energy efficiency standards for appliances. More recently, DOE has focused its work and taxpayers' money on renewable energy and climate change. It is one thing for government to engage in fundamental scientific research that the private sector would not perform, particularly because advancements in science promote national security through technological prowess. Government, however, should not be picking winners and losers in dealing with energy resources or commercial technology. Such government favoritism can crowd out new innovation, devolve into cronyism, and raise energy prices for consumers and businesses. It is time for the United States to use all of its energy resources again for the benefit of the American people. New policies. Energy. To ensure that the American people have access to abundant, affordable, and reliable energy, DESIS's energy role should be focused on working with the energy industry and networks to ensure energy infrastructure security through science and coordination with the private sector, assessing international energy issues that constitute threats to U.S. national security, promoting U.S. energy resources as a means to assist our allies, diminish our strategic adversaries, and ensure the existence of markets that will support domestic energy production, pursuing early and advanced science, including materials science, that is related to energy and national security, developing the leadership necessary for the disposal of commercial and government spent nuclear fuel, national energy security, protecting American infrastructure from cyber and physical threats, both natural and human, is vital to national security, the economy, and the well-being of the American people. Protecting and advancing these national security interests is a proper role for the federal government. DESIS should focus on studying threats to the electric grid, natural gas, and oil infrastructure, sharing such information with the energy industry, promoting the reliability and security of energy resources and infrastructure, and developing strategies and technologies to combat threats by working with the national labs. The following offices would report to the DESIS Undersecretary of Energy Security. 1. Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, CSER, elevated to an Assistant Secretary. CSER would work with the existing or reconstituted versions, as described in more detail below, of the Office of Electricity, OE, Office of Nuclear Energy, NE, Office of Fossil Energy, FE, Currently, the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, FECM, Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, ERE, and the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR, to identify and address threats to energy infrastructure. Instead of trying to decarbonize the American economy and allocating taxpayer dollars for commercialization of energy technologies, these offices would focus on energy security by identifying threats to energy supplies and infrastructure, developing strategies to address those threats, and funding fundamental science and technology where appropriate. 2. Office of Electricity, Assistant Secretary. 3. Office of Nuclear Energy, Assistant Secretary. 4. Office of Fossil Energy, Assistant Secretary, with carbon management deleted from its title and purpose. 5. Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, Assistant Secretary. 6. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, standalone or part of CSER. Eliminate special interest funding programs. Many DOE energy funding programs are not targeted on fundamental science and technology. Instead, they focus more on commercialization and act as subsidies to the private sector for government-favored resources. The DOE Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, OCED, Office of State and Community Energy Programs, ARPA-E, Office of Grid Deployment, OGD, and DOE Loan Program should be eliminated or reformed. If they continue to exist, FECM, NE, OE, and ER should focus on fundamental science and technology issues, particularly in relation to cyber and physical threats to energy security, rather than subsidizing and commercializing energy resources. Eliminate political and climate change interference in DOE approvals of liquefied natural gas, LNG exports. In addition, Congress should reform the Natural Gas Act to expand required approvals from merely nations with free trade agreements to all of our allies, such as NATO countries. Focus the Federal Energy Management Program, FEMP, on ensuring that government buildings and operations have reliable and cost-effective energy. FEMP should stop using taxpayer dollars to force the purchase of more expensive and less reliable energy resources in the name of combating climate change. Ensure that information provided by the U.S. Energy Information Agency, EIA, a data and statistical organization, is data neutral. Focus FERC on its statutory obligation to ensure access to reliable energy at just, reasonable, and non-discriminatory rates. FERC is a 5-member commission created under the DOE Organization Act that regulates the wholesale sales and transmission of electricity, promotes electric reliability through standards, permits natural gas pipelines and LNG export facilities, sets natural gas pipeline shipping rates, and sets oil pipeline shipping rates. It is an economic regulator and should not make itself a climate regulator. Streamline the nuclear regulatory requirements and licensing process. Such changes would help to lower costs and accelerate the development and deployment of civilian nuclear, such as advanced nuclear reactors, including small modular nuclear reactors. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC, is commission tasked with the licensing of civilian nuclear reactors and power plants and regulating other uses of nuclear materials, such as nuclear medicine. Although it is not a DOE agency, its jurisdiction over nuclear reactor, fuel, safety, and trade issues often relates to or impinges on DOE's jurisdiction. Focus on energy and science issues, not politicized social programs. The next administration should stop using energy policy to advance politicized social agendas. Programs that sound innocuous, such as Energy Justice, Justice 40, and DEI, can be transformed to promote politicized agendas. DOE should focus on providing all Americans with access to abundant, affordable, reliable, and secure energy, and DOE should manage its employees so that everyone is treated fairly based on his or her talent, skills, and hard work. New policies, international energy security. To help the president and policymakers understand and apply U.S. energy interests in international affairs more effectively, various DOE programs offices need to be reformed. Promote American energy interests. The next administration should make U.S. energy dominance a key component of its foreign policy while ensuring that domestic and international goals are aligned. American energy dominance will allow the United States to secure energy for its citizens, markets for its energy exports, and access to new energy natural resources, and will provide tools for U.S. policymakers to assist our allies and deter our adversaries. DESA should analyze U.S. international energy security interests and develop a National Energy Security Strategy, NESS. This strategy would take account of the energy landscape across the globe to inform the president in his foreign policy and defense roles, but it should not be a tool for U.S. industrial policy, although it might highlight how current domestic industrial and climate policies threaten U.S. energy and national security. Strengthen the role of the new Department of Energy Security and Advanced Science. There are frequent turf battles on energy issues between the Department of State and DOE. Although the State Department clearly has the policymaking authority under the DOE Organization Act, it tends to ignore the expertise and perspectives that DOE provides. The existing Assistant Secretary for International Affairs should provide the principal support for the DOE Secretary and Deputy Secretary on National Security Council (NSC) activities and should interface with colleagues at the Departments of Defense, State, Treasury, and Commerce, as well as the intelligence community, IC. New policies, advanced science. To ensure that America continues to lead the world in fundamental science, the national labs should be refocused and national science policy should be reviewed and coordinated. Refocus the national labs on fundamental and advanced science. DO currently oversees 17 national laboratories. The 3 national labs run by DOE's NNSA should continue to focus on national security issues. The remaining 14 science and energy labs should focus on basic research projects. Demonstration and deployment of technology should be left to the private sector. This goal can be achieved by realigning the labs to limit duplication and mission creep and to maximize potential. Conduct a whole-of-government assessment and consolidation of science. Before the start of a new administration, there should be a review of all the federal science agencies. This should include a review of the ill-advised attempt to expand the National Science Foundation's mission from supporting university research to supporting an all-encompassing technology transition. Specific to DOE, there should be a review to measure, prioritize, and consolidate DOE programs based on a range of beneficial factors, including degree of relationship to national security, furtherance of energy security, cyber, but also international aspects, and importance to scientific discovery, advancement. New policies, remediation of nuclear weapons, development programs, and civilian nuclear waste. Cleaning up the radioactive waste produced in support of the Manhattan Project and the Cold War at America's nuclear development sites is a massive and complicated process led by DOE's Office of Environmental Management. Projected liabilities and costs to be borne by America's taxpayers, according to DOE's FY 2023 budget request, total $887.205 billion. In addition, the federal government is required by law to dispose of nuclear waste produced by the private sector, including spent fuel rods from nuclear power plants. The new DZES should continue DOE's remediation of radioactive waste created by the nuclear weapons projects from the Manhattan Project in Cold War. Strong leadership focused on accelerating the cleanup, coupled with technical and administrative innovation, will be needed to reduce the federal government's third largest liability. Develop a new approach that increases the level of private sector responsibility for the disposal of nuclear waste. Disposing of civilian nuclear waste is an important national issue that requires strong scientific study. According to an independent audit conducted by the public accounting firm of KPMG, the Nuclear Waste Fund holds $46 billion in payments by utilities and their ratepayers, plus interest for a permanent waste disposal site for spent nuclear fuel and other nuclear waste. The licensing process for Yucca Mountain as a permanent repository for spent nuclear fuel is on hold. Without storage sites, spent nuclear fuel remains temporarily stored at nuclear plants. In addition to permanent storage, low-level nuclear waste facilities are needed. New policies. NNSA. The U.S. nuclear arsenal needs to be updated and reinvigorated if we are to be able to deal effectively with threats from China, Russia, and other adversaries. As a semi-autonomous agency, the NNSA has the primary responsibility for researching and designing new nuclear warheads and for ensuring that the existing nuclear arsenal is still potent. These efforts require significant funding and scientific know-how. In addition, NNSA develops and designs nuclear propulsion reactors for the U.S. Navy. NNSA also plays a role in preventing nuclear proliferation. With strong leadership by the Secretary of Defense, the next administration should fund the design, development, and deployment of new nuclear warheads, including the production of plutonium pits in quantity, expand the U.S. Navy, and develop new nuclear naval reactors to ensure that the Navy has the nuclear propulsion it needs to secure America's strategic interests. End ineffective and counterproductive non-proliferation activities like those involving Iran and the United Nations. Budget. DOE's total FY 2023 budget request, which does not include IIJA, IRA, and CHIPS and Science Act funding, was for $48,183,451,000. Many DOE activities are required by various authorization and appropriations bills. To implement many of the policies contained in these proposals, several laws will need to be amended, including the Department of Energy Organization Act, IIJA, IRA, and possibly portions of the CHIPS, Creating Healthy Incentives to Produce Semiconductors, and Science Act. Ending taxpayer subsidies will promote an all-of-the-above energy policy, lead to more energy resources, reduce costs, and save taxpayers billions of dollars. Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, CSER. Mission Overview. CSER's mission is to enhance the security and resilience of U.S. critical energy, infrastructure to all hazards, to mitigate the impacts of disruptive events and risk to the sector overall through preparedness and innovation, and to respond to and facilitate recovery from energy disruptions in collaboration with other federal agencies, the private sector, and state, local, tribal, and territory governments. Needed reforms. The threats to U.S. energy infrastructure are real and persistent, and CSER's role, working to support national security by working with the private sector to ensure energy security, is a proper one for government. Though CSER is properly focused on the threat to the grid from inverter-based resources like wind and solar, it needs to focus on the entire energy system, including the interdependence between natural gas and electric generation and cybersecurity. A good first step would be to reinstate an iteration of the Trump administration's Executive Order 13920, securing the United States bulk power system. The Biden administration also placed the Strategic Petroleum Reserves, SPR, and DOE's Federal Power Act 202C authority under the CSER office, which should continue in the next administration. New policies. CSER should be refocused to prioritize the cybersecurity, physical security, and resilience of critical infrastructure. Through research and development, technical assistance to states and industry, and emergency exercises, CSER can make a difference in our energy security posture. Budget. CSER received $177 million for FY 2022 under the Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill 2022 and $550 million through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The FY 2023 budget request is for $202 million. In addition, the White House has sent a letter to Congress requesting additional appropriations of $500 million to modernize the SPR. Office of Electricity, OE. Mission Overview. OE was created after the 2003 blackouts to improve grid reliability and energy assurance. OE works to defend and promote the reliability and resiliency of the electric grid through power grid modeling and analytics, cyber resilience programs, and coordination with private sector electricity providers. It also works to identify defense critical electric infrastructure, needed reforms, focus more intently on grid reliability. There are significant cyber, physical, and reliability threats to the electric grid, and it is important that a government agency with access to national security information develops data and plans to address threats to the grid and assist the private sector in securing it. Although OE does not stand out as a problematic office, additional focus and priority could be given to its original mission of working on grid reliability and resilience. OE could be combined with CSER, as well as what is left of the Grid Deployment Office if it is eliminated. Eliminate applied programs. OE administers grant programs for things like energy storage and the testing of grid-enhancing technologies, GETS. These programs should be eliminated. The next administration should work with Congress to eliminate all DOE applied energy programs, including OE, except perhaps those related to basic science for new energy technology. New policies. Prioritize grid security. OE, along with CSER if they are combined, should focus on the security of critical infrastructure equipment used in the bulk power system as envisioned in President Trump's May 2020 Executive Order 13920 and a related December 2020 Prohibition Order, which was revoked in April 2021 by President Biden. In addition, CSER OE should 1. Focus on the interdependence of and threats to electric generation and natural gas pipelines. 2. Continue to focus on defense critical electric infrastructure. 3. Work with FERC and the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NARC, to ensure that there is sufficient dispatchable on-demand generation available to generate the electricity the grid needs when intermittent generation like wind and solar is not available, end funding of programs for commercial technology and deployment. The next administration should work with Congress to eliminate non-essential funding of commercial technology and deployment. These activities can be conducted by the private sector. Budget. OE's FY 2021 enacted budget was $201,720,000, and DOE has requested $297,386,000 for FY 2023. Office of Nuclear Energy, NE. Mission overview. The Office of Nuclear Energy's mission is to advance nuclear energy science and technology to meet U.S. energy, environmental, and economic needs. It has 5 stated goals: enable continued operation of existing U.S. nuclear reactors, enable deployment of advanced nuclear reactors, develop advanced nuclear fuel cycles, maintain U.S. leadership in nuclear energy technology, and enable a high-performing organization. Under the Nuclear Waste Policy Act, the Office of Nuclear Energy has also been responsible for the DOE's statutory requirements to collect and dispose of spent nuclear fuel since the Obama administration's dissolution of the Office of Civilian Radioactive Waste Management. Needed reforms. NE is too influential in driving the business decisions of commercial nuclear energy firms. Instead of focusing on a limited set of basic research and development activities that solve foundational technical issues that apply broadly to energy production, NE intervenes in nearly all aspects of the commercial nuclear energy industry. Absent wholesale reforms that restructure the federal energy and science bureaucracy to eliminate such functional energy offices, the next administration should substantially limit NE's size and scope, adopt broader regulatory and energy policy reforms that reduce regulatory obstacles, allow all energy sources to compete fairly in the marketplace, and establish a predictable policy environment. This will avoid unfair bias against the nuclear industry. New policies. NE should transition to a more limited scope of responsibilities that focuses on basic research, solving broadly applicable technology challenges, and solving the nuclear waste management issue as it relates to the development and deployment of advanced next-generation reactors, which can include small modular reactors, SMR. While respecting existing contractual obligations, NE should not initiate any new civilian reactor demonstration and commercialization projects. NE also should focus on overcoming technical barriers that are preventing commercial reactor demonstration projects from moving forward. Any activities in support of existing nuclear plants and any other projects directed toward commercialization, including licensing support, should be shouldered by the private sector. Reorganize its remaining activities into 3 basic lines of responsibility: nuclear fuels across the fuel cycle, reactor technology, and civilian radioactive waste. Budget. The above reforms would cost substantially less than the $1,275,060,000 requested for FY 2023. Legislation such as the IIJA placed additional funding for new reactor demonstration projects outside of NE. These responsibilities and their associated funds should be moved to NE as appropriate. NE should not simply add or subtract programs, as some programs may help to support NE's new priorities. The better approach would be to build a new budget and program strategy that accounts for related DOE programs and submit a new budget request reflecting NE's new priorities. Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, FECM. Mission Overview. DOE is authorized by law to increase the conversion efficiency of all forms of fossil energy, reduce costs, improve environmental performance, and increase the energy security of the United States. In recent years, the Office of Fossil Energy, FE, has been transformed from its statutory role of improving fossil energy production to one that is focused primarily on reducing the carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel extraction, transport, and combustion. This change is reflected in the office's new name, the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, FECM, effective as of July 2021, and FECM's mission to minimize the environmental impacts of fossil fuels while working towards net zero emissions. Needed reforms: eliminate carbon capture utilization and storage, CCUS, programs. Despite the recent expansion of the 45Q tax credit for carbon capture utilization and storage, CCUS, to $87 per ton, most carbon capture technology remains economically unviable, although private sector innovations are on the horizon. CCUS programs should be left to the private sector to develop. If the office continues any CCUS research, that research should be focused more on innovative utilization. Pursue the processing of critical minerals. Development of domestic critical material sources is important for national security, as the vast majority of critical materials are mined or processed, or both, in Russia and China. The processing of critical materials from fossil fuel waste products, primarily coal, has shown some potential and, in view of our vast domestic reserves of coal and abundant waste from coal mining and combustion, should be pursued. New policies. Eliminate FECM. The next administration should work with Congress to eliminate all of DOE's applied energy programs, including those in FECM, with the possible exception of those that are related to basic science for new energy technology. Taxpayer dollars should not be used to subsidize preferred businesses and energy resources, thereby distorting the market and undermining energy reliability. Rename FECM, if it cannot be eliminated, under its original designation as the Office of Fossil Energy and with its original mission, increasing energy security and supply through fossil fuels. Focus on energy security and supply. Absent elimination of FECM, Congress should direct FECM appropriations toward increasing energy security and supply. Congress has already directed these goals, including the reduction of costs. Ensure that LNG export approvals are reviewed and processed in a timely manner. In particular, 1. Ensure that LNG export applications are reviewed and approved expeditiously. 2. Maintain the categorical exclusion from the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, for LNG exports that was established by the Trump administration, or if it is revoked by the Biden administration, reinstate it. 3. Work with Congress to expand automatic approvals to include allies such as NATO, as well as nations that have free trade agreements with the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR. The Biden administration moved responsibility for the SPR to CSIR. Regardless of where the responsibility lies, the new DSES should ensure that the SPR is maintained for national strategic purposes and not misused for political gain. Budget. The FY 2023 budget request for FECM was approximately $893.2 million. FECM's requested appropriation can be compared to the more than $4.0 billion requested for the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. The disparity in funding demonstrates how DOE's research activities and substantial portions of its organizational structure are now focused entirely on the reduction of CO2 emissions rather than energy access or energy security. Office of Energy, Efficiency and Renewable Energy, EAR. Mission Overview. The Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy traces its roots to the Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1975, but most of its programs today are rooted in the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Under the Biden administration, EAR's mission is to accelerate the research, development, demonstration, and deployment of technologies and solutions to equitably transition America to net zero greenhouse gas, GHG emissions, economy-wide by no later than 2050, and ensure that the clean energy economy benefits all Americans. The office is made up of three pillars: energy efficiency, renewable energy, and sustainable transportation. Needed reforms. End the focus on climate change and green subsidies. Under the Biden administration, EAR is a conduit for taxpayer dollars to fund progressive policies, including decarbonization of the economy and renewable resources. EAR has focused on reducing carbon dioxide emissions to the exclusion of other statutorily defined requirements, such as energy security and cost. For example, EAR's 5 programmatic priorities during the Biden administration are all focused on decarbonization of the electricity sector, the industrial sector, transportation, buildings, and the agricultural sector. Eliminate energy efficiency standards for appliances. Pursuant to the Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1975 as amended, the agency is required to set and periodically tighten energy and/or water efficiency standards for nearly all kinds of commercial and household appliances, including air conditioners, furnaces, water heaters, stoves, clothes washers and dryers, refrigerators, dishwashers, light bulbs, and shower heads. Current law and regulations reduce consumer choice, drive up costs for consumer appliances, and emphasize energy efficiency to the exclusion of other important factors such as cycle time and reparability. New policies. Eliminate EAR. The next administration should work with Congress to eliminate all of DOE's applied energy programs, including those in EAR, with the possible exception of those that are related to basic science for new energy technology. Taxpayer dollars should not be used to subsidize preferred businesses and energy resources, thereby distorting the market and undermining energy reliability. Reduce EAR funding. If EAR cannot be eliminated, then the administration should engage with Congress and the House and Senate Appropriations Committees on EAR's budget. EAR's budget was around $1.5 billion a year when the advances were made that led to dramatic cost decreases in wind, solar, and battery technology. In recent years, Congress has appropriated many billions of dollars in excess of EAR's normal budget. DOE requested more than $4.0 billion for FY 2023. It should rescind these excess monies so that DOE is not required to spend them. If funding cannot be reduced, then it should be reallocated to more fundamental research and less toward commercialization and deployment. Focus on fundamental science and research. If EAR cannot be eliminated, then the administration should focus on broader and more fundamental energy research, consistent with law. The Biden administration is too focused on deploying technologies instead of relying on the private sector. Moreover, under the Biden administration, EAR is too focused on decarbonization and not at all on the cost of energy. Eliminate energy efficiency standards for appliances. The next administration should work with Congress to modify or repeal the law mandating energy efficiency standards. Before, or in lieu of repealing the law, there are steps the agency can take to refocus on the consumer by giving full force to the provisions already in the law that serve to limit regulatory overreach and protect against excessively stringent standards. For example, the Trump DOE prioritized the relatively few appliance regulations that were likely to save consumers the most energy and refrained from those whose modest benefits are unlikely to justify the costs. It also took steps to ensure that any new standards do not compromise product quality or eliminate any features. These and other consumer protections are in the statute, but have often been ignored. Budget. EAR was funded at slightly more than $2.8 billion in FY 2021, and DOE requested slightly more than $4.0 billion for FY 2023. Congress needs to rescind the appropriated monies that EAR has not spent and begin fresh with new appropriations. Grid Deployment Office, GDO. Mission Overview. The Grid Deployment Office was established to implement parts of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Pursuant to the IIJA, GDO administers funds appropriated by Congress to support transmission expansion and low-zero carbon resources. In addition, GDO is developing studies of the electric grid to address congestion, enhance reliability and resilience, and promote clean energy. Needed reforms. End grid planning and focus instead on reliability. FERC and NERC have the primary responsibility for addressing reliability. States have the primary authority to site and permit transmission lines, and regional transmission organizations assist in planning regional transmission needs for parts of the country. But Congress granted some grid planning and siting authority to FERC and DOE through the Energy Policy Act of 2005 and IIJA, as well as grid funding through the Inflation Reduction Act. Instead of focusing on grid expansion for the benefit of renewable resources or supporting low-carbon generation, GDO should be incorporated into the reformed Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, which would work to enhance the grid's reliability and resilience. To the extent that they remain in effect, the funding programs that GDO oversees and administers should emphasize grid reliability, not renewables expansion. Consider whether to defund the Civil Nuclear Tax Credit Program and hydroelectric power efficiency and production incentives established in the IIJA and administered through GDO. If subsidies for renewable resources are not repealed, it may be necessary to continue subsidies for nuclear and hydro to ensure grid reliability. New policies. Eliminate GDO and assign necessary activities to the reformed CSER. It appears that GDO's current purpose is to promote the integration of low-zero carbon resources onto the grid by supporting subsidies for such resources and building new transmission facilities at a cost that poses a barrier to renewable generation expansion. However, some of the grants that it administers under the IIJA appear to be properly focused on enhancing the reliability and security of the electric grid. They should be reassigned to the reformed and expanded CSER. End DOE GDO's role in grid planning for the benefit of renewable developers. Under the Energy Policy Act of 2005 and EJA, DOE is to perform grid congestion studies and has authority to identify national interest electric transmission corridors, NIETC. Under the Biden administration, GDO is working on a national transmission planning study and is administering $2.5 billion to support nationally significant transmission lines, increase resilience by connecting regions of the country, and improve access to cheaper clean energy sources. Defund most GDO programs. GDO oversees nearly $20 billion in new appropriations created by the IIJA, including a grid modernization grant program, the transmission facilitation program, and the civil nuclear credit program, among others. Congress should rescind any money not already spent. Budget. Congress appropriated $10 million for GDO in FY 2021, and DOE has requested $90.2 million for FY 2023. Office of Clean Energy Demonstration, OCED. Mission Overview. The OCED was established in December 2021 to implement the IIJA. Its mission is to deliver clean energy demonstration projects at scale in partnership with the private sector to accelerate deployment, market adoption, and the equitable transition to a decarbonized energy system. Needed reforms. End market distortions and stop shifting technology and development risks to taxpayers. The OCED is distorting energy markets and shifting the risk of new technology deployment from the private sector to taxpayers. The IIJA provided more than $20 billion in government subsidies to help the private sector deploy and market clean energy and decarbonizing resources. Government should not be picking winners and losers and should not be subsidizing the private sector to bring resources to market. New policies. Eliminate OCED. The next administration should work with Congress to eliminate all DOE energy demonstration programs, including those in OCED. Taxpayer dollars should not be used to subsidize preferred businesses and energy resources, thereby distorting the market and undermining energy reliability. Refocus on resources that will support reliability. To the extent that the various energy research and development funding authorities cannot be repealed, funded projects should be consistent with the programmatic goals of the next administration. For example, the already awarded Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program should help to move SMRs from pilot scale to commercialization, and in the process address material, fuel, and regulatory issues that would pose deployment risk to utilities and Wall Street. Budget. DOE's FY 2023 budget request includes $213 million to initiate a new $150 million competition to support demonstrations that address integration issues of renewable energy into the U.S. transmission and distribution grids. Overall, the $21.5 billion provided by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law supports several OCED programs. Advanced Reactor Demonstration Projects, $2.5 billion. Carbon Capture Large-Scale Pilot Projects, $937 million. Carbon Capture Demonstration Projects Program, $2.5 billion. Clean Energy Demonstration Program on current and former mine land, $500 million. Energy improvements in rural or remote areas, $1 billion. Industrial Demonstrations Program, $6.3 billion. Long-Duration Energy Storage Demonstrations, $505 million. Regional Clean Energy Hubs, $8 billion. Regional Direct Air Capture Hubs, $3.5 billion. Personnel. By drawing resources from across the DOE, the OCED has already grown to 70 personnel in 6 months. If OCED is eliminated, those positions can be eliminated. If OCED is reduced, its personnel can be reduced to fit its scope.